Here we are. Welcome in, everybody, to the first installment of our webinar series for the new academic year. And if you may have noticed, if you've been with us a little bit, we've changed our name. We are now the Dream Job webinar series. And we have a great lineup of quote unquote dream jobs and interesting occupations throughout the fall and winter, and then hopefully again in the spring. We put out our full schedule a week ago, and we're starting off with a super cool guest, Mr. Tay Hawker, who's a sports agent. And we're going to learn all about his career, his background, and what he's building right now with his team. In just a few minutes, we have Brittany Spangler here providing sign language services. Sharonda, I see your question. Look right above in the chat, unless paste it one more time, Mac, in case you just came in. Or put it one more time, and then you'll see the worksheet link to download. We have Mac from the Rubin team who'll be helping in the chat. Mac, you can turn off your camera and help in the chat as needed. And we'll get to Mr. Hawker in just a few minutes. I want to share a few updates, resources for the group, which I'll say again at the end, but I'll start here. We developed a whole collection of new material, new resources, which we're going to be sharing throughout the fall. But what we love to do first is give out some free resources. And the first one is one we've done before. But if you're new to us, this would be a good opportunity. Our company is called Rubin, and we provide online resources for business communication skills. And one of those resources is helping students write emails. We put together a Google Drive of resources for teaching students how to send professional emails. You can see the topics here: how to write an email address, how to not send an email like a text message, how to write a subject line, how to address teachers and employers, how to make your own email signature. I'll tell you in just a second how to get these resources. If you don't have them yet, they're really useful in the classroom. Any teacher, show of hands, how many students are writing you emails like they're sending you a text message? Any hands up for that? Any Zoom hands? That emails like texting. So this is one of the issues that we work on, helping students be more professional. And we'll talk with our guest about that, about not sending out messages that look like scribble, and how important it is to look your best. So we're going to love to give you these resources. And also, we've given this out in the past, but if it's new to you, please grab it from us, an online presentation checklist of some good quick pointers of how to prepare for a presentation, what to do right before you go on and as you deliver. So really good tips, a one-pager to put up in the classroom or put online for your students to reference as they do virtual presentations or in person throughout the year. So if you'd like these resources, and if you're new to us, you don't have them yet, this is all you have to do. Go to the chat, please, and type your email and the word interested. Email and the word interested. And we will send you these resources, there's no fee. They're free to have. Okay, what we like to do for the folks who are new to our community is have a brief conversation. So we will reach out to you tomorrow, Thursday, put a 5-minute invite on your calendar to explain these resources so you can not only use them with your students, but share them with others in your school, right? Because these are universal skills that everybody needs to know before they graduate. And we want you to be the person to share it beyond today's webinar, okay? So if you're providing our email, and you're new to us, keep an eye on your calendar for 5 minutes tomorrow. And if the time doesn't work, you can just tell us a new time. It's no big deal, but we would love to have that personal connection. So thanks to those who put their information, and we'll mention it again at the end. Also, I want to point out that this is the first of 8 sessions we will do this fall. Our next Dream Job session will be September 20th. We're talking to an educator, a principal in Alaska, on the edge of the earth. He is a principal of a high school in Alaska, Paul Barker, and that'll be a really cool conversation too. So look out for the email and the invitation for that session. 2 more things. If you're watching this on a recording, then you can also have our email lessons. Just send us an email to support@rubineducation.com with the subject line of email resources, and we will send you the material that way. Okay. And finally, everybody here today who's with us live will get a certificate for being here, showing you were here. And I'd be curious, for those who have come in the past, how have you used these certificates before? Have you had students put them in a portfolio, have you put them up in the classroom? What have you done with these certificates over the past year or two? If anybody has ideas about the certificates, tell us in the chat. I'm curious to know how you've used them, because we put one out after every session. So with that, all the little housekeeping notes, I want to bring in our guest, who I'm grateful for his time. I know he's got a lot going on in his world, Mr. Tay Hawker, sports agent. I'll first have him tell us his background, how he got to this point of his career, and then we'll dive into the work that he does. So go ahead, Tay, tell us what you're all about.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and credit to you and what you've built here too. The resources that you're going through are incredibly important, and I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But as you mentioned, my name's Tay Hawker. I'm a licensed sports and entertainment agent. My focus is sports. I represent athletes from all over the country, all over the world actually. But I came over to America. You can probably tell by the accent, from New Zealand. Came to America it was 10 years ago now. That time flies. So I came over 10 years ago on a rugby scholarship to Lindenwood University in St. Charles, Missouri. If we have any Missouri people in the chat, that's considered my American home state. So while I was there, I started working in the NFL as a scout with the St. Louis Rams, which ages me a little bit because I've been in Los Angeles for a while. So they went out to LA. I still had to graduate, so I stuck around, did some internships, and then went out to LA and worked with the LA Clippers. So continue my time in sports. Had to, I won't get into the visa side of the world, but to stay here, I had to essentially go back to college to stay on my type of visa. So I went back to Arizona State University and got my master's in sports law and business, which started the legal side of my experience, and then ended up working in student athlete development there. I'm skimming over some jobs, which we can get back to. So I worked in student athlete development at Arizona State University, and then ended up heading out to Virginia, where I was working in student athlete development at Old Dominion University prior to NIL, and then dove into the sports agency world after that. So it's a very, you can imagine the journey and experiences I've managed to pick up along the way, but that's a summed up version of my introduction.
It's great. And you've done so much in a short amount of time. And one thing, okay, let's go back to last year. Those who've been with me before, when we meet a new guest in our session, what do we always do first? What do we show we've done with our guest when we start the conversation? It's an R word. Does anybody remember that word? Can you tell me in the chat, those who have been with us before, what do we do when we meet somebody new? Let me get my chat open. Anybody remember that word? If not, I'll tell you in a second. But the word is research. We do. Thank you. I was a little bit ahead of you, Scott. Appreciate it, Scott, from Coachella Valley up in California. Thank you, Scott, for being here. So we do our research. And so what I did is I visited the Hawker agency website, and I was reading all over because I was fascinated by this business and the world in which he's operating. So I was reading about the work he does for athletes, for companies, and specifically looking at the services that he provides to athletes. And so before I get into the name, image, likeness stuff, okay, we'll get into that because that the whole thing's fascinating and students need to understand. But let's talk first about your day-to-day, how you've leveraged the skills you picked up along the way, like in student development, to what are you providing to a student athlete right now, or an athlete in general? What does your agency do?
So when people mention day to day, it stresses me out because no day looks the same.
Got it.
So basically, what I sum all of it up in saying is that we make sure that our athletes or student athletes continue to be just that. And what I mean by that is I want them to focus on their classwork, being good on the playing surface, and having fun with their friends. That's all I want them to care about. I take care of the rest, is what I say. So whether that be contract negotiation, making sure that everything they're doing on the legal side is above board. I sat down with numerous student athletes last semester, and we studied for finals together. We went through the classes and made sure that they're studying the right amount for the right classes, depending on their level of expertise. We went through, we do budgeting sessions. The list will go on, but basically the idea is that we provide resources that can ensure that their life can be as good as it can be, with the added stresses of running their own personal brand or small businesses.
So Okay, so this really leads into the heart of the matter, which is many of your clients are in college, right?
Yes.
Many college students. And even a year ago, 2 years ago, this type of work would not be possible because now it is legal for, amateur athletes, college athletes to sort of make money off of their brand and their ability, their talents through what's called NIL, or name, image, likeness. So first, explain to the group what that is, what NIL is, and how you have leveraged this new reality to help grow your business.
So, yeah, it's a great question. NIL is essentially your name, your image, and your likeness, which is essentially anything that you put out into the world, your own personal brand. It's not your ability to play the sport, though, which is a difference that we can get into. It's your ability to drive a return on investment for what you're putting out into the world. Like I said, with sponsorships, it could be coaching, it could be merchandise. It's anything off the field, and you can be very creative in that space too. And I think that's what's really exciting about NIL is it forces you to be kind of creative. You're not getting paid to be good at football or good at volleyball or whatever sport you play. You're getting paid for your ability to sell something, whether that be you or a product. So that's probably the best way to explain it. Everybody has a name, image, and likeness. Everyone on the planet has that ability to leverage their background, their image, their what they stand for. You can leverage that to sell something. Essentially what you're doing is you're an influencer, and everybody's familiar with that. I think a few years ago the term influencer kind of had that negative connotation because people didn't really know what that meant or if it was a real job. Well, now we're finding it's very much a real job, and not only is it a real job, but you can make a lot of money doing it. And so we essentially enable our athletes to be micro to massive influencers through their platforms.
And as I ask the next question, students and teachers, please go to the Q&A now along the bottom row of Zoom and start putting your own questions. When you write your question, put your name and your school so we can give you proper credit. But please start putting your own questions in the Q&A, not in the chat, Q&A, and we'll start to pick out some good ones and we'll ask as we go along. So to really drive home, it's always good to see an example of someone to help understand the situation. So when I was on your website, let's go back to the research, I read about Malik the Freak Carr, and I read that he is a Michigan State tight end, and he signed a deal with WWE, the Wrestling Federation, to position himself as a potential future wrestling star once he's off the playing field. And it said in here he would get 5 figures annually, right? So this is real money. So how does he sort of fit the mold as like the sort of the future of your agency and the future of NIL and also wrestling coming into college? Is he sort of personify like the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so this deal is really exciting. I've been working really closely with the WWE for about close to a year now. I represent a current WWE superstar, Tiana Caffey, who went through college. We signed her while she was in college. She graduated. She went on to the WWE. Malik is a part of a group of college athletes that the WWE has partnered with. I represent 5 that are on that college roster. So do a lot of close work with the WWE. And what I found is really interesting about that, I'm not sure if people are WWE fans, but Triple H is a massive executive within the WWE. And I worked with him. I spoke to him a couple of years ago about NIL, because what I identified is that NIL is essentially WWE. They build a brand around a character and person, and then they put it on a stage and fans get behind it and invest in it and say, that's my favorite person. It's less so they can be good at fighting, but we know the nature of the WWE is performative. It's athletic. Do not get me wrong. I'm not calling it fake. You can't fake falling.
You can't fake it, but so much. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get behind their persona, right? And so this correlation between NIL and the WWE is almost perfect because they're picking out college athletes that are able to build a fan base around them and build that persona. Malik's personality is just incredible. He's a hilarious guy, full of energy, always bouncing around the room, and so he's perfect for the WWE. And then kind of off Malik, Case Hatch is a fullback at Arizona State University. He's another one of the athletes. Totally different persona, but has the physical image. He's a massive, very muscular guy, and he's a very blue collar worker. He's got his own character around him. He actually does wake up at about 3 every day and works for his dad's construction company before going to football practice and then class. And so he's got that edge to him on that side too, and so he gets to build that character. And they're two different people, but they both fit what the WWE is looking for.
Wow. I think this is such cool stuff. Raise your hand if you think this is a pretty cool conversation. I mean, this is the absolute, cutting edge of sports and entertainment. Tay is like right there at the intersection. And probably the most famous athlete turned wrestler has to be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, right? I mean, he has done the most with that, coming out of University of Miami and now one of the biggest stars in the world. So it's almost like the WWE sees college as the minor leagues of their profession. They can just mine for talent all over, and you can help facilitate. It's just really, really cool. We have some great questions now. As we were talking, we have, let's see. Let's start with Brooke Bell and Stacy LeDuc. The teachers and their students have a similar question. What skills are required to be an agent? What education do you need? What training? What background? If students are watching this, they want to jump in, how do they get started?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to get in. I would say at the top level, make sure you get all your licenses with states and the organizations you're working with.
What does that mean? Let's pause on that. What does it mean to have a license?
Well, let's start at the lower level, like as if we're going up, and like, because licenses is once we are officially an agent. So if you go to college, you do need to get a master's degree. I'll say that at very minimum. It doesn't need to be a law degree, but law or master's is fine. I have attorneys that work for me in my agency. So I personally haven't passed the bar, but I have, because my master's was in law, I have a good enough legal background to be able to hang. And what I say is I know enough about law to know when I need to call my attorney. And so
smart.
I have attorneys that do work for me. If you do want to be a standalone agent, it's always recommended that you do go to law school. But because I will work, or I own an agency, I have that in-house. And so go to college, obviously get your undergrad degree, and go on to either get a master's or a law degree. Your undergrad, to be frank with you, isn't that, the major isn't that important. The degree is, but the major, you can kind of get there any which way. So I would pick a major that you can accumulate as much knowledge in this space. So that could be business, marketing, law, PR, anything along those lines. Okay. Something in the business or law world would be ideal. Or the creative space is certainly growing. And then after that master, you graduate from your master's, then I'm thinking tangible qualifications. You then go to your licenses, which are basically not every state. A handful of states require a state license to be an athlete agent. It's generally, you fill out a form. Each state is different, but most of the time it's a form, background check. You list your current clients. If you don't have any, that's typically not a deal breaker. Fingerprints, and you file it off, and they typically say, yes, that's all good. And then I would say, and then on top of that, you'd work with different organizations as well. And some of them, like the NFLPA, has a separate certification that you need to get to work with the NFL. NBA is the same, MLB, etc. So outside of that, it's tangible. Let's talk soft skills. To be a good agent, it's hard because we get somewhat of a bad rap in the agency world for being really hard negotiators and those grumpy people, like the show me the money kind of guys, which certainly exist. I have that persona built into me, but it hides a lot of the time. I would say the reason that I've been successful in this space is because I'm personable. I like building relationships. I can proudly say that I've never lost a client. No one's ever left me from being their agent. So everyone that we've signed is still with me. And I like to think that it's because they like me as a person, and it's a very close relationship you build with your clients or your athletes. It's someone that they know that they can call me at 3 a.m. if they're in trouble, or even they're in a fight with their spouse and they want someone to vent to. I do that too. It's one of those things that you have to build that relationship, because when you do talk money a lot, it can be a personal relationship there, or a hard conversation. I've personally found that the closer I am with that person, the easier it is to have that conversation candidly. And so I would say being able to build a relationship, communicate effectively, and then the other side of it is be able to negotiate. Research is incredibly important, because if you have more data than the person you're negotiating against, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a pretty good negotiation if they come back at you at something and you can say, oh, I'm prepared for that. So it's preparation is obviously part of that research. And so, yeah, I would say that they're probably the big ones jumping off the page. The work ethic is a no-brainer, but you're going to hear that in every profession.
Wow. A lot there, right? A lot of those sort of practical skills, like nuts and bolts, getting licensed, the soft skills. We heard a lot of those. I do want to point out, we use these sessions to teach as well. He said sort of offhand, oh, you got to make sure you're licensed, right? So then I said, well, what does that exactly mean, right? What does it mean to be licensed? And is that okay? Is it okay to ask a follow-up question? I'm asking the students, is it okay to ask a follow-up question of something you don't understand? To stop the person politely and say, do you mind expanding on that, telling me more? Raise your hand if you think that's okay, to have the confidence to ask someone, can you tell me something more about that? I want to understand it, rather than just letting it go right on by. So that's very important, to listen for cues. And if you want to know more, the person is happy to tell you more, because it shows that you're very interested in that. Let's get another question here from the group. And again, please keep the questions in the Q&A area of the chat. We have, let's see. I would like to ask, he said, what's it like being the boss from Robin Pratt Patriot High School? What's that like? Running your own business too.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's exciting, nerve-wracking, and everything in between. So you do have to be very cognizant of that fact. You have to learn how to speak to what I like to think of coworkers. I don't really love thinking on the boss. It kind of creates a different relationship that I don't love. I love my team to know that they have the power to make decisions for themselves. I'm big on executive decision making. It's totally, I support them. I took a while to learn how to say no. And that was certainly something that was a challenge for me originally, to kind of, what I do is I learn to shift people's perspective. If they had an idea that I either didn't think it was a great idea, we would work together to realize together that it's not rather than me saying, no, that's a bad idea, I don't like it. I would say, well, let's think about these things that could affect that. Or what if this happens, what would be your reaction? I know what my reaction is, but I want to hear them say it. And that way we kind of get to the solution together. So I guess I could get carried away on the leadership side of things, but being your own boss is great. But nerve-wracking, simply because if everything fell apart, it's on me. But if everything succeeds, it's also on me. So it's a big risk and reward thing.
That's a great answer. And I definitely feel that too, growing our company as well, and all the exciting, nerve-wracking and everything in between. Before I forget, I want to make sure you told me a great story before we came on and did this session about really what kind of launched you into the business. Tell us the story, your origin story. I think it probably would be appropriate to call it. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, one of them. So I, as I mentioned earlier, I knew that I needed to go back to school to continue this dream of working in American sports. And to go back to school, I found this program at Arizona State, at the Master of Sports Law and Business program, which was everything I wanted and more. So I got in touch with the director, Sam Reno, and he talked a little bit about the program, but I knew that for me to get into the program, I needed to wow him because it was a hard program to get into. Now, I knew that if I could sit him down with the coffee and he got to know me as a person, I could do that once he knew that I was personable and hardworking, etc. And so what I did is I got him on the phone and said, hey, can I take you to coffee? And he said, yeah, how does tomorrow morning work? Now, he didn't know that I wasn't in Arizona. I was in Los Angeles at the time, and it was Friday. And so he wanted a Saturday morning coffee. And the first thing you think is like, oh no, I have to reschedule already. But I didn't want to let him down because he was a guy I was trying to impress. So I just on a whim said, yeah, I'll be there. Fully realizing, but not understanding the magnitude of the fact that means I'm going to have to leave the office at 5 in Los Angeles, drive to Phoenix. Basically what I did is exactly that. Drove to Phoenix. I got in. It was quite late, I think like 1 or 2 in the morning, and got a hotel at wasn't a good hotel. I didn't have a lot of money back then. So I got a dodgy hotel, stayed the night, got up in the morning, wore my same suit from work, went to coffee with Sam. Also, I hadn't been to Arizona before. No one told me it was going to be 120 degrees. And so I was sweating bullets trying to impress Sam to get me into the program, and I had coffee with him. I still don't know if he knew I did that. I don't think we ever discussed that I was in Los Angeles at the time. But then, got back in the car, drove back to LA, and a few weeks later, he admitted me into the program. So it was all worth it. I'd do it again tomorrow, but definitely something I look back on and go, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people wouldn't have done that.
Wow. And it's a great story. And students, teachers in the chat, what types of words would you use to describe Mr. Hawker in that story? That he would just get up from his seat, drive through the night, be there the next morning. What words would you use? What qualities? Determined, dedicated, right? So stories really are who we are. They make up our identity. And we should remember that when we're promoting ourselves, we should tell our own stories of overcoming challenges and how we push through difficult moments. That's how people will come to understand who we are and how we can personify all of those words. So thank you for sharing that story. That's great stuff. Question in the Q&A from Andrew Suarez. What's been one of the most challenging experiences you encountered so far? How did you overcome it? So let's go beyond that story. Let's go to like an actual client. Has there been a really difficult client, someone you worked hard to earn their trust or to win a deal? Like what comes to mind when you think about the work itself?
Yeah, I'm really proud of the relationships that I do have with my clients, but there certainly are clients that are harder than others to work with. But I will say, so to answer the question bluntly, there's been times where a client has misunderstood the expectations of what I can do. And that's tough because I'm not Superman. I can promise hard work, but I can't do everything. And
Can't
so
make miracles.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's been times that I've had to have very candid conversations. And I think that's something that has been difficult to get used to because having a tough conversation is always tough, right? And so learning to making sure that the relationship is the most important thing. And so what I took away from it is to really make sure that they understand why we do certain things or why I'm explaining something a certain way. The why is really important to me. Fortunately, on the client side, we haven't had that. Like I mentioned that, but it's usually cleared up by a phone call or saying like, hey, this is what I can do. If we want to achieve this goal here, this is the things that we would need to do to achieve that goal. Maybe that client can help. That hasn't really come up. I would say a lot of my biggest challenges have come from it's a lot of work in this space. I've been up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning more often than I would like to, getting things ready for the next day. I'm very big on promptness. I do not wait long for replying to emails and things like that. So I'll stay up to make sure all that's kind of done. But then the next day I'm dragging. I love to work out. And so I kind of gauge my energy levels of how I feel in the gym. And so there'll be days that I'm struggling in the gym because I was up too late last night. That's been some of the challenges, I would say. On the client side, we've been really blessed. I love my athletes more than anything in the world. They're like children. So they're like my children. So that's a great thing. But yeah, I'd say managing expectations has been some conversations that has been tough.
Okay, that's a good answer. We have some interesting questions here, like Janelle Manning asked, a teacher, I think it was Brandy, asked, but the types of sports you work within, like I know football and soccer, and I know on the site there's gymnastics. Someone, Janelle asked about professional show jumping or horse riding. Like, what's the variety of sports that you right now work with in your clientele?
Yeah, it's a very timely question because we recently restructured the agency to focus on our sports, and that's simply because when we started, we were mainly NIL. We're not anymore, but we were kind of focused around the NIL space, and that meant that we brought in athletes in sports that I'm not that good at or don't really understand the world of. And so what we had to do is identify which sports we are going to focus in, what are going to be our premier sports that we are good in, and what sports we can't represent. And so right now we've got 6 divisions. You might be bringing it up. So yeah, we've got football, soccer, rugby, combat sports, gymnastics, tennis, and then entertainment is essentially the athletes that we had signed that we don't have a home for right now. And so we obviously handle their entertainment packages, whether it be with marketing deals, public speaking, etc. So yeah, we've got some really cool sports there. If I'm not the expert in that sport, I have an agent that is the director of that department. And so yeah, it's exciting. I love it.
So I'm just clicking around, like pick a face off this list. Like, what can you tell us about one of these athletes, like a deal they've landed or you help them land, or like, I'm just looking around. There's a lot of different people, different sports here. Like what comes to mind for gymnastics, for example?
Yeah, the gymnasts are one of my favorite divisions to work with. They're fantastic, really, really cool girls and hardworking. Man, they're talented. But a cool story with Elena, actually. We partnered her.
This one right here.
Yeah,
Elena.
Yeah, so we partnered her with. She's a gymnast at LSU. We partnered her with Cheesecake Factory and DoorDash earlier this year. But what was quite challenging is that she was traveling for gymnastics at the time. And so DoorDash was sending her like a t-shirt and some gear and things like that for the activation of the deal. But she was about to be on the road in Raleigh. I think she was going up to compete against NC State. And so she was about to hit the road. We were kind of like scrambling a lot of late nights to get the package overnighted to her in time because we wanted to post by Sunday. I don't remember all the days specifically, but it was very much down to the wire. And so my director of gymnastics, Sydney, she kind of helped on that. She was fantastic, kind of going back and forth with Elena. We ended up doing the activation in a hotel room in Raleigh, where she got like cheesecake from Cheesecake Factory. We had to find a Cheesecake Factory in Raleigh to go through with it all. She was doing flips in the hallway on the TikTok and everything. So that was a really fun one that challenged us. It was exciting. And so, yeah, Elena's a great one.
Wow. Let's do one more. Like I picked soccer. A lot of young women here across the list playing soccer. Anybody jump out to you here?
Yeah, I mean, they all jump off the page as far as like marketing deals.
Yeah, just something interesting that took place with them.
Yeah, so I mean, Parker's an exciting one. She's with the NWSL, but I think Tori,
I'll go back.
So Tori's partnered with Charlotte FC actually. So that's been an interesting one to work with Charlotte. Tori's the first one on that list there. So she has an NIL deal or a marketing deal with a MLS team in Charlotte FC, and so they get her out to a ton of games. She's been on the field for games. They do a ton of marketing activations with her. That's been really exciting because she's from Raleigh, so it's like kind of the hometown team there. I've noticed I've leaned on in North Carolina a lot.
just so happens
in the chat. So yeah, no, like I said, you could pick out any of the athletes. They've all been incredibly fun to work with.
I think that's cool, right? Because this is a combination of sports, social media, creative marketing. I mean, there's so many interesting fields and industries that intersect with the work that you're doing. I think it's right where, students are with how they consume media today. So it's a really, really cool space. I'm going to take just a quick timeout in sports lingo, and I want to do a little exercise with students, because at our company, the Rubin Company, we are big on communication skills. And I think Mr. Hawker will appreciate, we talk about coming with more data, more details, more research than the other person. Let's do a little exercise together, where I have one more slide to show you. Okay, we talk a lot in our curriculum. We work with schools, provide curriculum for communication, and we talk a lot in these sessions on the power of details. and adding numbers wherever possible to strengthen your case. I want you to look at the sentence with me. We've held a benefit that a lot of people attended, and we raised a great deal of money. Now, what's missing from this sentence? Numbers, specifics, hard evidence, right? The details that really bring the sentence to life and make it meaningful, make you believe it. So what I want you to do, okay, and teachers can do this if you're the one at the controls or the students at their own computer, I want you to go to the chat right now, and I want you to rewrite this sentence for me. And where you see the words in red, I want you to put numbers. How many people, how much money? You make it up. But show me a rewritten sentence. And this goes right in to writing presentations, doing pitches, negotiations, resumes, learning how to own your numbers, right? Mr. Hawker's business, they have numbers to share. If you say, well, we did that crazy back handstands and back handsprings in the airport or the hotel in Raleigh, and we had lots of people watch on TikTok. Well, you don't want to say lots of people, or we had many people. You got to say exactly how many views it got, right? I mean, that's really what sells it, is the number. So I want you to rewrite this sentence for me. Let's see a few examples in the chat so we can learn together the power of our own numbers, personally or in our business. And as the students do that, Mr. Hawker, what do you think of this exercise, learning to focus on our numbers?
I was about to say the post-COVID era is so important to learn the power of writing, because a lot of things are done on the computer now. I read a lot of emails. I'm not doing as many in-person meetings, and something like this is incredibly important, because at that sentence, I would probably glaze over if I was reading it from someone trying to sell me something or a prospective client or whatever it might be. I'd glaze over it and say, oh, they did something. Okay, cool. Next sentence, because I'm kind of always on the go. But if you put numbers in there or details in some fashion, it makes me kind of create an image in my head now. If you say the difference between saying we had 3 people there or we had 3,000 people there, now you've painted a picture for me. Oh, that was a massive event, and we raised $4, or we raised $4 million. And then I go, oh, they raised $4 million. So like, you've caught my attention. So it's a great exercise.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the numbers, as they say in sports, very popular, numbers don't lie, right? Mm-hmm. Numbers don't lie. Your stats are your stats, and you can't argue them. So we all have stats, right, in our own lives. We have numbers we own. If anybody this summer worked at a restaurant, right, think about how many people you sat at the restaurant each night, each week, each month. How many cars did you valet? How many coats do you check in cold weather? Like, think about the numbers that exist in your world, and think about how big they can become over time, right? You own incredible statistics right now that will help you catch someone's attention on a resume, in an email, in a presentation. We have to remember to use them. We have a couple good examples here. Janelle said we held a benefit that 3,500 people attended, and we raised $350,000. Very nice. Laurie says we held a benefit that 1,100 people attended. We raised $2,000. Excellent. Hold on to that lesson as you go through the year, because it's all about being your most authentic self and leading with the details that make you different. And thank you, Purcell, 450, 10,500. We're going to wrap up in just a minute with some closing questions and discussion. Before that, I want to remind, for those who came in a little after we started, if you missed our little offer at the front, we have a Google Drive of resources teaching email etiquette. And Mr. Hawker just said, it's never been more important to be a good writer than post-COVID, when we're more virtual than ever before, and more, Zooms and Google Meets and all of that, and Teams. So we're going to learn in this little Google Drive some lessons on how to write effective emails. All the little pieces. If you send Mr. Hawker an email where the whole email is in the subject line and it looks like a text, are you likely to answer that email, Mr. Hawker, if the whole thing is in the subject line?
It's probably getting deleted before I start looking at it.
Yeah, you're probably not even going to open it. It looks like spam.
Yeah.
And you're afraid to infect your computer. So this is real, right? And he's not some old veteran of the game. He's done it for 50 years and he only writes with a pen. No, he's young. And he's telling you, right, you got to come with something more if you want to be successful. So this is a free resource, also an online presentation checklist resource we'd love for your students to have on how to do great presentations throughout the school year. If you missed this offer at the beginning, this is how you get it. You go to the chat right now You type the word interested and your email address. Interested and your email address. And if you are new to our community, we will put a quick calendar invite for tomorrow for 5 minutes to meet you, have a human conversation, learn about what you're doing in your school so you can share these resources with other teachers and students in your building, in your district. You can be the point person to share this far and wide. Lastly, we have another session September 20th. We'll be talking to an educator, high school principal, way up there in Alaska. But same challenges anywhere else, and anywhere else in America, anywhere in the world. Learning to be a principal or work in education. If you're watching on a recording, you can have the same resources that I just mentioned. Just email us with the subject line of Rubin email resources, and we will be sending everybody with us live the certificate for being here. It'll come to you Thursday morning as well. So thank you for going through all those with me one more time. I want to come back to our guest. I did have a question from the chat that I want to give proper credit. It's a good question. Oh, where did it go? Oh, it was an anonymous person. But if it was you, then tell us. So did you get a ring from the Rams championship?
Unfortunately not. And I did text them saying, hey, I want my ring. But no, I didn't. I was too far gone. I left them in 2016.
All right, so long before.
Yeah.
But what did it mean for you to see them win it last year? You were in the organization when they were, in the building blocks, as they say, and they were getting themselves there. What did it mean to watch that happen?
Honestly, everything, because I'm really close with a lot of the player personnel stuff. Sure. And so I watched them build a team that won a Super Bowl. And so that was surreal. And so that was pretty exciting to kind of text them and FaceTime them afterwards and just be like, wow, I was there the year that we drafted Jared Goff. We were doing the scouting there. So and I argue that we won that between Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, but it was building blocks though, and I know Matt Stafford obviously took it and won it, but like the people we put in place were part of that leverage and learning about, and I won't get too much in the weeds, but a lot of people understand the Rams drafting strategy is essentially give up major picks for current good players. You're talking Odell, Vaughn, Miller, etc. And so we saw a strategy come to life, and I think that was probably my biggest takeaway is how they developed a strategy, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it came to life and won them a Super Bowl.
Yep. It's great when, you're patient, you stick to your playbook, and then it pays off. It rarely happens in sports. Only one team can win every year, despite everybody's strategizing. So that's really neat. You can tell me if it's an interesting question from Kim Kirk down in the chat. The largest NIL deal. I don't know what you're allowed to say. Tell us what's the most substantial deal. If you're allowed to say dollar figures, fine. If not, don't worry about that. But what would be the most significant deal that you've helped a client land so far?
So I think there's two answers, and I'll try to be quick because I know we're getting tight on time. But money, I can't disclose numbers. There's confidentiality,
no problem,
and those ones. But I can say that it's more than the minimum US salary. So let's say that, which is it's a nice little nesty. So that. I'm trying to think through what I can and can't say. I can say that the WWE's deals with all of our athletes accumulate to the largest amount across the board. They did a terrific job. But yeah, with there's a couple of other marketing deals with some of our athletes with the followers up in the hundreds of thousands that can make some real money. Obviously, when we've signed some of our athletes to professional clubs, that's the biggest ones because they're salaries and But as far as marketing deals, which is NIL, that would be probably what I can say there. However, you said a word that kind of stood out, talking about the most impactful and the most meaningful. And a really cool one, Thiago was a guy who worked with me on our football division. He got a deal for one of our linemen up at Indiana last season. So he had a puppy or a dog, I think it was whatever you want to consider it. I'll call it a puppy. And his name was Hoosier because he was playing for the Indiana Hoosiers. Sure. And every week they traveled for football. We got a dog kennel to basically have an NIL deal with Dylan, and Dylan got free boarding, gift cards and stuff to the store. He got a monthly stipend as well. So he didn't need to worry about what his dog was going to do when he traveled for football, because he got free kennel. And so when you think impactful, I believe that was impactful because we took something that would stress Dylan out, and we took care of that for him and said,
I love that.
And
That's a great example to wrap up on. I think you're doing such cool work, innovative, creative. Can we see some Zoom hands and some thank yous in the chat for Mr. Hawker giving of his valuable time with us? This was so interesting and a great way to start our Dream Job series. And by the way, Eunice says the Giants will win it all this year, the New York Football Giants. So there you go. Football season is upon us here in America. But thank you, Mr. Hawker, for being here. Thank you, Ms. Spangler, for your help. Thank all of you for participating. Really great discussion today. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks for our conversation with the educator, learning about that world. Very different from today, but interesting all the same. So appreciate your time, and everybody have a great rest of your week, and good luck starting your year. And we will see you soon.